Okay, so this lesson today is using equations in geometry. So equation geometry application. All right, so on a triangle, we know on a triangle that all the angles add up to 180 degrees. And the parentheses here, you don't need to keep those parentheses on. Those are just showing that that whole expression is for that angle. So you can take those off. So I'm going to take my three angles and add them together. And again, all the angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So I'm going to combine my like terms. So I have 1x plus another x plus another x makes 3x's. And then I have 5 plus 10 makes 15, and that still equals 180. Okay, then from there I'm going to go ahead and solve for x. We've been practicing this lots. So I get 3x's equals 165, and then I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 3, which is 55. Okay, now if the question is what's the measure of each angle, I would then take 55 and plug it back into each expression to see what it is. So this first angle is just x, so that one is just 55 degrees. The second one is x plus 5, so this angle is 60 degrees. And the top one is x plus 10, so that is 65 degrees. Okay, on this one, it says, suppose that triangle QRS is isosceles with base RQ. Suppose also that the measure of angle R equals 2x's plus 24 degrees, and the measure of angle S equals 3x plus 41 degrees. Find the degree measure of each angle in the triangle. Sorry with that announcement. Let's go ahead and keep going. So isosceles means that at least two sides are the same, and since you have these marks here, that means that those two sides are the same, and if those two sides are the same, then these two angles right here also have to be congruent. So if I want to, set this up that all the angles added together equal 180 degrees, I have to know the measure of that angle.
Please come to the office.
And again, since they told me this was isosceles, and I know this angle is the same as this angle, that means this angle has to be 2x's plus 24 as well. So I'm going to add all of those together and set it equal to 180 again. That's a lot of expression writing there. You could just combine your like terms right here. So I have 2x's plus 3x's plus 2x's makes 7x's. And then I have 24 plus 24 plus 41 makes 89. And again, that's set equal to 180. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 89 from each side. And I get 91. And then divide each side by 7, which is 13.
Tayson Jackson, please come to the office. Tayson Jackson, please come to the office.
Okay, now that I know what x is, I can plug that back into my expressions for each angle and find the measures that are missing. So let's go ahead and plug that back in. So right here I have 2, what's going on? 2 times 13 plus 24, which is 50. So this one's also has to be 50. And then the top one, 3 times 13, I know it should be 100 80 because the bottom two are 100. But I still want to plug it in and check. So 3 times 13 plus 41 makes 80. And that adds up to 180 degrees. If it had said that the triangle was equilateral, equilateral means all sides are the same. Isosceles means 2 sides are the same. Scalene means none of the sides are the same. All right, on this one, this is really important what they tell us here. The first word that is really important is that they say it's squares. You can't just go by what looks like something is. You have to go by, exactness. What's the shape? So we know for sure it's a square because they say it's a square. And what that tells us is that all the sides are the same on each square. Then it tells us that the squares are identical. And you have to know that to be able to solve this. So it's asking what the area of each square is. But before I can even think about what's the area of each square, I've got to solve for x. So I can just find what is the length of each side. And then I'll worry about area. Okay. So they said that each square is identical, which means... Sorry, I had to pause it again, the announcements. So anyways, if these squares are identical, then that means this side has to equal this side. And they're also squares. So I'm going to set up an equation like that then to show that. So 3x's plus 7 has to equal 5x's plus 1. So I'm going to go ahead and solve this for x. So I get my x on one side. So I have 7 equals 2x's plus 1. And 6 equals 2x's. Divide both sides by 2. So I find that x equals 3. Now, I'm not done yet. The question was, what is the area of each square? This is just the value of x. It's not even the length of each side. So if I want to find the length of each side now, I'm going to come and plug that in now. So 5 times x is 3 plus 1, that equals 16. So I know that length is 16. So this one should also be 16, but we'll check it. So 3 times 3 plus 7, I also get 16. So that means on each square, each side is 16. Now to find the area of a square, we do length times width, or side times side. So I have 16 times 16, which gives me 256. Now, since they don't have the units labeled, like whether it's inches or feet or whatever measurement, we just call it units. And when you do 16 times 16, you're also doing units times units, because it's 16 units times 16 units. And units times units is units squared, or square units. So that had several steps to that problem, but the first thing you need to do is, how do I find x? Okay, let's try this next one here. So it says, find the perimeter of the equilateral triangle below. So equilateral means that all the sides are the same. We're not talking about angles right now. We're talking about the sides. Okay? And again, before I can worry about doing anything with perimeter, I need to know what the measure of each side is. And to find the measure of each side, I need to know what x is. So I've got to figure out an equation I can set up to solve for x. So since it says this is equilateral, all sides are the same, that means this side should be equal to this side. So I'm going to set them equal to each other. And now I can solve for x. So I'm going to add my 2x's to each side. and then subtract 18 from each side. And I get that x equals -2. Now again, that's not the measure of the side, that is just what x is. So to find x, I'm going to take it and plug it in to each expression. Now, if I've done it correct, I should get the same number from each expression. So when I plug those in and solve that, I find that each side is 10. Now perimeter means the distance around the outside, basically like a fence going around that shape. So I would do 10 plus 10 plus 10, or 10 times 3. And I get that the perimeter is 30 units. Not squared, area is squared. This I was just saying, what's 10 units plus 10 more units plus 10 more units? That makes 30 units. Okay, so on this problem, you've got to know what the term regular polygon means. That without that word regular there, you really wouldn't be able to solve this problem. So it says find the perimeter of the regular polygon. So a polygon is a figure that has 3 sides or more. So like a triangle, a quadrilateral, a pentagon, hexagon, heptagon, and I could keep going and going. Those are all polygons because they have 3 or more sides. What regular means, if it's a regular polygon, that means that all the sides are the same. So all the sides are equal. It also means all the angles are equal. Now the angles on here are not important because we're not talking about that. We're talking about perimeter, which has to do with the sides. But just so you know, a regular one means that. So for example, if I drew a pentagon that looked like this, that's still a pentagon, but that's obviously a non-regular pentagon because the sides are not the same and all the angles are not the same. Okay, so because it said it's regular, that tells me that all of these have to be congruent. And again, before I can even think about doing perimeter, I need to find what the value of x is. So if all these sides are the same, then that means this expression should be equal to this expression. So I'm going to set that up as an equation and solve for x. So I'm going to distribute my 3x's minus 3 equals 5x's minus 6. I'm going to get my x's on the right side on this one. Get -3 equals 2x's minus 6. Add 6 to each side. I get 3 equals 2x's, divide by 2. So x equals 1.5. Okay, so that again is just x. If I want to find the length of each side now, I'm going to go back to my picture and I'm going to plug that into each expression. So 3 times parentheses 1.5 minus 1, and 5 times 1.5 minus 6. Now this just so happens that when you solve each of those expressions, you get 1.5. So the measure of each side of this pentagon is 1.5. Now perimeter again means the distance around the outside. So you could literally do 1.5 plus 1.5 5 times. Or quicker would just be there's 5 sides, each one is 1.5, so what's 1.5 times 5? And we get 7.5. Again, there's no units on here, so we say 7.5 units. And perimeter is not squared, it's just units.